Hello, this is Penguin Podcasting back here. Got some new equipment, which is fun, and we're just gonna be playing with it today, seeing how it goes, and I can't wait for this story.
All right, you ready?
Yeah, I'm very ready. Of course, I'm always ready.
So this is a story from a long time ago.
It's scary.
This story is roughly 67 years ago in this area. So you see here, we're walking along the Spokane River. And the Spokane River has centuries of stories hidden in its depths. We can walk over here for a second, get a little shot of the river. But if you look down in the water, you can see it's pretty clear down there. You can see all the way down into the rocks. And what a lot of people don't realize is that deep in those waters is many, many stories. So 67 years ago, there was a guy who lived in the area named George Arbuckle. And George was a mechanic. He was the best mechanic in the area. Everyone in the area knew that they could go to George for any kind of repair. But the thing that people didn't like about George was that George lived on the other side of the river from everyone else. He lived on this side of the river and everyone else lived way over there. And the only way you could get over to George's place is if you crossed on this little handmade trolley ferry thing that he had made. He would put out a big rectangular piece of wood and a rope, and you'd have to drive onto this thing, and he would pull you across. And if he didn't like you, he would just leave you out there in the middle of the river for as long as he wanted to. So you'd always take a bit of a risk going to good old George. Well, George was also known for giving different kinds of prices for different kinds of people. So if you were really poor, he would basically do the work for free. But one day, this real rich guy, Slick Rick, showed up to ride on the ferry. And he yelled over to old George and he said, "Hey, George, I gotta get my Ford worked on. I don't know anyone who can do the work. Can you fix my this crack in my engine block?" And old George looked at this guy and he knew Slick Rick. He didn't like him that much. So he said, "Sure, I'll fix your Ford. But what you gotta do is you gotta pay the price." So Slick Rick, he said, "I'm rich, I can pay anything you ask me to pay." So he said, "I don't care what it is." So George said, "All right, go ahead, drive out onto the ferry." So he drove out onto the ferry, and it was right here. See that spot right there? Right by that rope swing. That rope swing is the only thing that's left of that. Hi. So, like I was saying, Slick Rick, he gets in his Ford. He pushes that thing all the way to the edge of the river, and he puts it onto the platform. George is on the other side, and he says, "All right, go ahead, get on the platform." So Slick Rick gets the Ford right on there, and George starts pulling. He pulls it halfway across the river, and he says, all right, now's the time for me to tell you what it costs. So Slick Rick's like, all right, man, quit jerking me around. Just tell me what it costs. So George says, what you're going to have to do for me is you're going to have to build me a bridge. And you're having to pay every last dime so that I don't have to pull this darn thing across the river for the rest of my life. Rick says, man, that's going to cost thousands of dollars. Maybe even 10. So George says, well, do you want your precious car fixed or not? Rick's like, fine, man. I want it fixed. So he does it. He agrees to get the bridge made. So George fixes the crack in the engine block, and Slick Rick is driving his Ford around. He doesn't give George two thoughts. He had no plan to fix this, put up a whole bridge for George. He didn't care if it would help everyone in town. He had a working car. One day, Slick Rick's driving by the river a little too fast, and he spins. He takes a dip into a little ditch, and he flips and he lands upside down in the river.
That sucks.
And little did he know, he ended up right by George's ferry. And you know what? George lived so close to the river that he saw this whole thing happen. But it had been 2 or 3 years since they made their agreement. And he knew that Slick Rick wasn't making good on his part of the deal. So he said, you know what, man? We made a deal, and you didn't make good on it. You hadn't paid me a dime. You didn't fix my bridge or build me that bridge like we talked about. So he said, I'll help you if you can pull yourself out of that river up to the shore. And George,
Very nice.
yeah, he's not a nice guy. So Slick Rick got out of his Ford, and he tried, but he couldn't get the Ford out of the river. So before he knew it, it was sunk. And George, from the other side of the river, looked back over and said, well, Slick Rick, maybe you'll think twice before you make a deal that you can't keep.
Yeah, that's pretty sad.
Yeah, it's a pretty sad story.
Yeah. It's also kind of rude.
It was kind of rude.
Yeah, all right. That's going to be it for today's story. I hope you guys enjoyed the story. I was kind of thinking about putting all of our podcasts together.
Oh, yeah?
And making one long video.
Oh, that'd be cool. I think we should do that.
Yeah, so that's just what might be upcoming. And yeah, that's about it.